episode 106 of the Inside the Mind podcast, and I'm privileged to be joined by Nate Riech, who, I mean, I gotta check my sources on this, but I think you're one of the more unique situations that growing up, you were cut on purpose from your basketball team because of your running coach, because he thought that you'd be a better runner than basketball player. I hope I got that one correct.
Yeah, definitely. First off, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it was one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Swint, and Mr. Lincoln, who was the cross country coach. I couldn't go right because I got paralyzed when I was 10, and I still had the after effects at that point. I think they knew that I would never really excel in basketball. I definitely could have made the team, but I think they saw like a huge upside in running, especially because of, I think, all the things I had just recently gone through with getting hit in the head with the golf ball, which that's cool to tell that story later if you want to hear it. But it was an interesting start.
No, yeah, let's start there because this podcast is about mental toughness and mental adversity. So sometimes I like some of my guests just to describe, that one piece of adversity they went through in their life that they feel has shaped them the most. So maybe if you don't mind, for people that are unfamiliar with your story, just kind of walking them through how we got to where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to start, to really understand my story, you have to understand that I come from a very athletic family, probably 8 to 10 professional athletes. And lucky for me, I was actually born while my mom was in college. So I got to see everyone kind of achieve their goals. And I still remember like one of the funniest, antidotes was growing up until I was like 8 or 9. I didn't realize that everybody didn't get up at 5:30 every morning and do sprints with their family in the street. Like that was something that we just did. I was taught to get up early, and that I had a lot of success in baseball growing up. And then one day we were going out and playing golf to kind of kill some time. At this point, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I grew up for a majority of my life. And on the 7th hole, we were just walking because we were only 10 years old. An older group of gentlemen asked to play through. And of course we obliged, we were reinforced very much by our parents to, be polite on the golf course. And so we hit our balls and stood under this tree because it was about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And I remember the guy who ended up hitting me, the driver he had was this like SQ Nike driver. And when you hit it, it sounded like a tin trash can. I remember hearing that tin trash can, and I remember my whole body just going numb. I think a lot of people can relate. A lot of times if you get hit so hard by something, even if you're in the ocean and you get hit by a really hard wave, kind of your body goes numb. And I had that tingly sensation running through my body, and I called my mom, and I was pretty dramatic at that point in my life. I called her and was like, hey, can you come pick me up? I just got hit by a golf ball. And she's like, for goodness sakes, like, come on. And then she was like, you're just going to end the round like early, like you paid for a full round. And then she came and picked me up, dropped my friends off first. And I remember when she first got to the golf course, she's like, can you squeeze your hand? Because she's very educated in human movement and the body. And so she's like, yes, I can squeeze it. So she was like, all right. So like in her head, she was like, all right, he's not like paralyzed. So like, I'm going to drop his friends off first and then take him to the hospital. And then right when I got to the hospital, it just almost like everything became fully paralyzed on the right side of my body. My mom asked me to jump out, run into the hospital, dragging my right leg, couldn't move. And got back into a hospital room when I had my first seizure. And that's like, I didn't know how serious it was, but at that point I knew something was not normal. And I remember trying to talk to my mom during my seizure, and she wasn't saying anything, but I guess I wasn't talking. And then I saw her bolt out of the room, and I've never seen, my mom's a very, very strong woman. I had never seen her kind of in that light before. And then I think the adversity that I think is the most pivotal moment in my life is obviously fighting for my life during that time. But in my exit interview, I remember the doctor saying, Nate, you'll never walk without a limp, and competitive sports are just not in your future. And he just really tried to close that door for me. And maybe that's his job, to, give you the most realistic answer maybe that comes to his mind. But yeah, that was hard to hear as a 10-year-old. But at the same time, I'm a fiery person. So I think that just really allowed me to just go to work after that. Like, I was like, all right, they don't think I can graduate from high school. They don't think I can graduate from college. And they don't think I can run professionally. And so why don't we do all of those? Mm-hmm. And I was really lucky. My mom was the perfect mother for me. Some people get hurt like I did, and their parents maybe coddle them a bit. But my mother is not a coddler. She is, I'm going to throw you in the fire and you're going to learn. And that's why I did able-bodied sport for so long, was because my mom was like, no, we're not going to be mediocre. We're going to be great. And so I get like kind of a tingling sensation just like thinking of everything my mother's done for me. But so yeah, that's kind of where the journey began. And like, I got out of I got out of the hospital on Saturday and went to school on a Monday. So if that tells you anything about my mother, I think that's the best example. Yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, there's so many examples out there of doctors giving their opinion about to an athlete that was injured, saying, you'll never compete again, you'll never walk again, whatever it is. And I wonder if it's like, as a doctor, they're just trying to be conservative and not have any liability, so that when an athlete does go ahead and push through, that they're not responsible for that. Or is it the case that, elite athletes like yourself, they just have that mindset, that's that top 1% or that top 0.5%, that they're just able to push past any sort of normal medical advice, so to say?
Yeah, no, I think they have written medical journals on my injury and just saying like, we've never seen someone recover the way you have. So I think part of it's that. And yeah, I think science has come along so much since 2005. So I think it's a bit of both. And honestly, like, it was my motivation for a long, long time. Like, I think I wanted to prove everyone wrong. I know you had Akeem Haynes on your podcast, and him and I have had many conversations in it. I've slowly kind of turned that, like, I want to prove that person wrong, then I want to prove people in my life right. Yeah. And it hasn't been an easy transition. It's been quite tough, because I think when you have so much success one way, it's kind of hard. And like I said, I'm just such a fiery, like, if someone says F you, like, I want to say F you back. Like, that's just kind of how my personality is. So,
I think that's that humans are wired too, that negative motivation, that's what gets the blood boiling, right? That's what gets the adrenaline pumping. Maybe that positive mindset does, but I think maybe in a different frame or through a different lens, that when you want to prove that person wrong, it kind of gives you like that pissed off feeling, like that F you feeling, like you said. But whether that's the healthiest way or not to look at it is of course up for debate. I, of course, am a huge proponent for the positive mindset, because that's where the long-term permanent changes in someone's mindset, I think, is able to be sustained when it's positive. Whereas that negative, I think it's more likely to kind of be more of like an up and down, because that negative motivation may not always be there, but I think somebody can sustain that positive motivation every day.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree with you. And in some sorts, I think my kind of mindset is more of a dark one. I think it comes from, like, whenever I'm hurting a lot in a race or anything, I go back to like laying prone on my back, being fully paralyzed with every cord going throughout my body. And I don't know why that's always been like a motivation for me. And I think a lot of it comes from, like, I'm running for the people who can't run, because there's many people who didn't turn out like I did. And I know I'm very lucky. I know I'm very fortunate. So I think I was lucky enough to get hurt so early, where I had that perspective, and it didn't come right away, obviously, but I think I just feel so lucky to be in the position that I'm in.
Yeah. And even like you said, going through that at 10 years old, I mean, I think back to what I was doing at 10 years old, and it's nothing remotely close to as serious as that. Or, but I guess that speaks to the power of growing up in such an athletic family. Like you said, to kind of understand your story, you kind of have to understand the family behind you and being brought up. I always compare it to somebody that's trying to learn a language, and how you see kids at 3, 4, and 5 years old, they pick up a language so quickly because that's when their brain is the most impressionable. And I always have that recommendation, or just that tip to parents, whoever it may be, is to get your kids involved into sports as early as they can, because the younger they are, the more impressionable their brain is, and I think they're more likely to gravitate or to grab on to those lessons that they can learn in sports.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I just felt like I was so lucky along the way. Like, my stepdad is my best friend, and him and my mom play such different roles. Like, they're such vastly different roles. My mom plays that more motivator and more harder conversations, and my dad was the one who I woke up at 5:30 in the morning 3 times a week to lift, and that's what led to getting runner-up at state my senior year of high school. And so, like, they play such different roles, and my stepdad always talked about the mind. Like, he would always be like, you have to be mentally ready. And honestly, that didn't really set in for a long time. I liked being angry going to the track. Like, I liked, like, it was kind of my outlet, I guess. So I liked like really going to the track. Like, I would even make things up that I was mad about, and kind of like Shaq used to do with David Robinson. Yeah. He used to like said that he didn't give him an autograph when he was like in high school, but that was a complete lie. Obviously, I would never say that like in person, something bad about someone, but like in my head, I would kind of be saying that to myself.
Exactly. I was going through some of your social media, and there's a quote that you had put that really caught my attention. And you said, a bad race is better than no race. And to me, that just, I think, speaks perfectly to you and your situation, and just being grateful for just the opportunity just to be able to run, right? I think a lot of people just maybe lose perspective of that sometimes, that whether or not you had a good or bad race, a good or bad game, good or bad match, whatever it is, whatever sport they play, just having the opportunity to play or to compete, I think, like, that's, I think, where a lot of the values and perspective should come from, because there's a lot of people out there that don't have that shot.
Yeah, no, that was actually a quote from my mom. She reminded me of that after I had probably one of my worst races of my life about a month ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago. And then I followed that up with a world record 2 weeks after that. So I think she really just reminded me at this point, like, it's really good to just have an opportunity to race. And yeah, she's always that's growing up, but she would always throw little quotes around the house that, like, she wouldn't tell me where they were. I would just find them randomly,
right?
And to kind of motivate me and kind of get me going. And yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for athletes. We're so result driven, which I think it's really shown over these last 5 years, that the talk around the process, at least for me, talking about the process and really enjoying the process. And like, if you're going for a run, like, enjoy the run, like, look around, like, say hi to people, like, enjoy it instead of just wanting it to be done.
When you say you had a really bad race a month or 6 weeks ago, was that a bad race in like an outcome perspective, or a bad race in the process perspective?
Outcome for sure. Like, I ran, I think, 22 seconds off my personal best. And I just kind of gave up. Honestly, I was more, I mean, the time's tough, but at the end of the day, like, I think when we're disappointed in a time, a lot of times it's like, what are other people going to think of this time? Like, are they going to think I just suck? And at the end of the day, like, I just gave up really early in the race. I was dealing with some family or some friend stuff. And I just kind of let it get to me, and that stuff has happened. Like, my stepdad had cancer when I was in college, and I actually had one of the best seasons of my life because he told me to stay focused, and I did, what he wanted me to do. But yeah, for some reason, I think I haven't been able to see my family in 16 months, and I don't know. I just like kind of really struggled that week for some reason. And I usually can kind of bring it back to center, but yeah, I just wasn't able to do it.
I mean, I'm not, of course, a competitive runner by any means, but running is one of those unique sports I find where it's hard for me to keep my mind occupied, I guess, during a run. Like, it just seems like there's so much for me to think about in a run. Whereas when I'm playing tennis, for example, if I compare it to tennis or hockey or soccer or something, my mind's kind of always thinking about the next play or the next move or what to do. But when I'm running, I mean, when I run, not on a track, just running down the beach, I just think about going straight forward. And then there's a thousand thoughts that come into my head. So I'm curious how you battle that, or if you have to battle that in your competitive races, kind of the distracting thoughts coming into your head.
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer is yes. But what I do is I usually say colors in my head. My coach, Jeff Harris, was an Olympian in the 800, and he really did a good job. He understood that my mind and his mind are pretty similar. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, it thinks a lot. And so a lot of times I'll pick certain colors that demonstrate certain paces. And then in the 5K, I just tell myself to go to sleep, like go to sleep for the first 3,000 meters. Like, don't even think about anything. Like, just focus. And I always think, like, if you can have focus, you might not be the most confident, but a lot of times, a lot of my PBs have come when I wasn't the most confident. It's just come when I was laser focused. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I did everything. Because I think a lot of times, if you did everything leading up to the race, then you might not feel confident, but that confidence is going to come from you checking everything off. And so I think that's something that kind of helps me. And that's something me and my sports psychologists have talked about, where it's like, you don't always need to be the most confident to run fast, but you do need to be focused. So that's something him and I agree on.
Are you still with John Coleman doing sports psych with him?
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He is. When you think about yourself before you met John, and maybe some other coaches, and now compare yourself to now in a running aspect, maybe personal life aspect too, because I think so much of sports blends into personal life. But are there one or two areas of your game, or just your mentality that you feel that has improved the most?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that I would have thought my mental game was probably the weakest part of my, if you put it all in like a blender, like they would by far be the weakest part of my performance. And now I feel like it's one of the strongest things, which is really cool. We actually had to like really do some deep work, and there were some things that I was just like still holding on to. Like, one of my ex-girlfriends committed suicide in high school, and she was just a really cool person in my life. And then I had multiple friends commit suicide while I was in high school. And then just like kind of really getting over, at times you kind of fall into this poor me mentality. I think David Goggins does a great job of talking about it. But I think for me, like, my stepdad played professional baseball, was teammates with Aaron Boone. And I was on such a positive trajectory with baseball. And I think for a long time, I always didn't feel bad for myself, but I always wondered what would have happened. But at the end of the day, that's just taken away from your performance. And so I think just saying it to John, like saying what I actually felt, really went a long way. And so we kind of had all these things. And I think activity that maybe some of your listeners might enjoy is you do like the stoplight, like green, red, and yellow. And which things in your life are in the green, which things are in the yellow, which things, all of those three. And I think it's really important, because sometimes maybe some things you don't think, and those are some things that we really had to align. Because it is hard. Like, I got a new coach when I started working with John, Heather Henninger, here at the Hub. She's amazing. But I just think it's always been hard for me to hone in, because I have so many amazing athletes in my family. So like quieting maybe some of those voices and really allowing Heather to coach me. And the coach I had before her, Mike Van Tighem, who coached some of Melindy Elmore, like some of the really, really great runners. I set my PB for the first time in like 4 years with him. And so I think it was a bit tough to kind of let go of that. And he's like he's basically family. His wife coached my mom. So it was tough to let go, but I think when I finally let go, that's kind of when the performances really, really took a big uptick. And obviously I've run my fastest I ever have with Heather post pandemic, which I didn't necessarily think I was ready to run those times, but sometimes when you're not able to test that work, you kind of surprise yourself a little bit.
Exactly. You mentioned the stoplight exercise. I'm really intrigued by it because I haven't heard that before. I know you were kind of getting to a bit there, but like looking at things as green, yellow, and red, how do you determine like what's the green, what's the yellow, and what's the red?
A lot of times you can really feel it, personally for me. But as things that like, for example, like physiotherapy is really important to me. My uncle, Trevor Harrison, who works with like Blake Griffin, Campbell Walker, worked with Kobe, works with Shaq. So he worked with some of the best athletes in the world. And I had that since I was injured. So I had like best treatment, like almost in the world. And just there's different philosophies with physio throughout the world, and his is the one that has always worked for me. Mm-hmm. And so, really finding someone that I really work well with, Sandeep here at the hub, I work amazing with. And so that was in the yellow, maybe red for a while. And then when we all got on the same page, and so, coaching was never in the red, but it was in the yellow at one time, just because there's different philosophies once again. And so I think it's really hard to compete. And my family is one thing that's really, really important to me. I'm an older brother of 4 siblings. And that's one thing I've struggled with throughout the pandemic, has been like, am I being a good older brother during this time? So that, I think that's one thing I've really had to work on, because I'm not used to having to FaceTime, my siblings and things like that. Cause usually I see them for Christmas and we spend a lot of quality time together, but haven't seen them in 16 months. So, I think that's been, a bit difficult. They live in the States. So, it's definitely a bit challenging, but, I do a lot of reflection, in a notebook. So it's pretty clear what's in the red. I guess in the yellow, it's more like, it's not good, but it's not bad. Like, but it's still kind of like, if it's stressing me out where I'm getting emotional, then it's in the red. If I'm just kind of stressed out and it kind of is in the back of my head and it just won't go away, then that's more something in the yellow. And then green, obviously, you're just happy about it.
Yeah, gotcha. So green is like you're good with it. Yellow is like starting to get good, and red is like urgent, need to work on it type of thing.
Yeah, correct.
I love that a lot. I think it's really key. I find that so effective for just athletes or not, to have those like analogies. Like if someone were to come to me, I think super, technical about reflecting and, the green, yellow, and red without using those words, just using the really big scientific words, it'd be hard for me to use it practically. But those analogies, I feel like are so helpful to people.
Absolutely.
There was another quote that you had that I saw that I was thinking about it as you had been describing the past couple of minutes, but running for you, I think you said that it started off as a therapy and now it's turned into a passion for you. Was that, I'm assuming it wasn't physical therapy you're talking about, it was like more mental therapy, or was there some physical benefits from it for you?
Yeah, no, it was physical therapy, because they're like, basically if you don't use the right side, then like there was a possibility of me having to amputate part of my arm because it just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And they were just really concerned about that, because when I was in the hospital, I got so good at using my left hand, I didn't use anything on my right hand because I would drop it. I would drop things. And as you know, junior high is just not the best time to be different.
Right. But I don't want to stand out too much.
Yeah. And I definitely did. It was definitely, so like in junior high, we had this thing called running club. And basically every half mile, 100 meters you ran, you got a popsicle stick. And so my mom, shockingly, used to challenge me to see how many popsicle sticks I could get. And it became like this really, at first I wasn't very good and I didn't really like running because it was really painful. And then I did the first race and I won. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Like I kind of like this. And there was kind of that mental component too, because at that time, it might not be true, but I believe I can endure more pain than anyone. And that's like my truth. It doesn't have to be true like in the world, but it's true to me. And so that was something that I just had success with, that mindset. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it kind of took off. And then I kind of saw, a lot of, people who I was in the hospital with, or, people I was on the Children's Advisory Board with at Phoenix Children's Hospital, they like really seemed, I don't know if inspired is the right word, but they thought it was really cool how much success I was having kind of quickly. And so that was something that I really, really thought was cool. And I did a lot of fundraising for Phoenix Children's Hospital within that area. And so it was really cool to kind of be able to kind of show that after being hurt, where they thought I wasn't going to be able to do anything.
I love it, because it kind of had me thinking there that it's not so much about per se running. It's more so taking something you're good at and helping other people and being that source of inspiration, for example, or maybe motivation, or just that role model perhaps for some people. I think that's where a lot of people need to start looking for their passion, is something that that they enjoy doing, but B, they're good at too as well, I think, because then they can be used as that source of inspiration.
Yeah, and figuring out why you're doing it is, I think, super important. And I think for me, like, I took especially after college, like I didn't know if I wanted to continue running. And I took a kind of hard look in the mirror and I said, if I told my siblings, Max, Avery, Benji, and Carly, to go chase their dreams, but I didn't go chase them after university, then I would be a hypocrite and I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so I just said in my head, F it, and said, let's go and search this thing. And then the Paralympic thing came up and kind of got classified and set the world record, I think like a month after it all happened. And I almost, like, in college, I wasn't that good of I was mediocre. Like I got all conference individually once, and we won the DMR a couple times that I was a part of, but I mean, I never got interviewed or anything. And then like it was like almost like a blow up in my face, and I was like, holy crap, like I don't even know if I'm ready for this. So that's when John Coleman for sure was a huge blessing, to really allow me to navigate that pretty tough time, as well as my family.
Yeah. I know, circling back for a second, because you had mentioned David Goggins beforehand, but I was just curious if there are any other, books or podcasts or apps or anything, helpful resources that you've found helpful to you, I guess, in the past couple of years or so when it comes to your mental game.
Yeah, I like Michael Gervais's podcast. I don't know why, Finding Mastery.
Gotcha.
That's one that I think is just fantastic. And weirdly enough, I love Joe Rogan. So as many people can agree, you might not agree with Joe and everything, but he does have people from both sides, from any side of life, to come onto his podcast and just talk. And I think that was kind of the reason why I started my own podcast. And it was a huge insecurity of mine, my voice and me talking, because I stuttered so bad after my injury.
Yeah.
And so it's cool, like people like you doing podcasts can influence others. That may be something that I was scared of for a long time, was putting myself out there and interviewing people, because I'd never done it before. But yeah, those are kind of the two podcasts that I really listen to, especially Joe's, like when I'm kind of winding down for bed. And I'm not someone who's very political or anything like that, but I do like to just hear different thoughts on different ideas, because I just kind of disengage when it comes to politics. I don't know, it's just really not my thing. I would rather, fundraise for a local children's hospital. That's kind of more my passion.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, the Joe Rogan piece, I always appreciate when he has the athletes on different. I know he's had other athletes on. It's mostly MMA guys, and he does a really good job of getting into just their mental game. And I learn a lot just personally listening to athletes. A 3-hour conversation about them going through adversity and stuff like that. So I definitely would recommend anyone, if they haven't already, to check it out. But where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so anywhere you listen to podcasts, it's Strides with Graywolf, and my middle name is Graywolf because my dad's side is Native American, and elder in the tribe gave me that middle name. So it's something I've always been so proud of, is my middle name, and so pretty much everything, my social media, everything has Graywolf somehow.
I would definitely use that too if I had a cool middle name like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question here before we sign off. It's kind of like a fun game, I guess, I like to play sometimes, but I want you to imagine that someone hands you a phone and you have Instagram on it, and you can make one post, and the one post that you make everybody in the world can see it. So you can post like a picture, a quote, a saying, a video, whatever it is. What would you post?
That's a good question. I feel like I would do like a split like picture with, there's I guess a picture of me learning how to walk again, and then a split picture of me winning worlds and just saying like your adversity doesn't define you, and then go on to say that my adversity was like the first time I started to live. I felt like I wasn't getting the full use out of my life, but after that injury happened, it just opened my eyes up. And sometimes the greatest thing to ever happen to you, you might not know it's the greatest thing until further down the road. So pay attention.
Being grateful and having that gratitude for things that happen. And like you said, adversity, there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it as, something bad that happened to you, or an opportunity to better yourself. And I think that kind of summarizes our conversation today, Nate. I had a lot of fun chatting with you, man. I think we talked about a lot of things that are going to be really helpful for anybody that listens in. I know personally myself, I picked up a few really helpful tips that I can start incorporating in my daily life. So I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I had really fun. It went by really fast. I looked up at the clock and I was like, wow, it's already been 30 minutes. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.